So a whole lot of you are here, which is great. So I'm going to start our question. And the question today, as I said before, is really short. And my answer's not really long either because it's not a really involved question. So I've got 2 more questions for this week. So I've got one for Thursday and one for Friday. I'll see how I go over the weekend, whether I answer any. It just depends how busy I get, because I like to sit and actually go over the question before I come into Facebook Live, so I give you the best answer that I possibly can. And weekends get terribly full, so I don't know if I will be able to answer it for you or not, answer one for you or not. But if you would like to send me a question, you can go to my website, elizabethroebuck-jones.com/ask, and you can ask me a question on my special form, which enables you to ask me a question confidentially, and it enables me to answer it confidentially. And of course, you get the benefit of the wisdom of all the girls in the group as well. So here is the question. Hi Elizabeth, how do I find a counsellor? I don't have a GP as my doctor moved overseas. I find it difficult to open up to someone new. Okay, so what I like to think is, when I sort of talk to clients about choosing a counsellor, trying a therapist, it's a bit like trying on shoes. You know, hi Lisa, how are you? You know how you go into a shop and you look at all the different shoes on the shelf and you see a pair and you think they look good and you slip your foot into the shoe and you think, oh nah, not this pair. And then, you know, you sort of put them back and you try another one. And it's a bit like that, because although counsellors are sort of trained in different disciplines, they all put their own flavour into it. And some counsellors, you know, will have their own approach and their own foibles and their own stuff. So it's important to remember that when you're choosing a counsellor. And even sometimes if you walk, hi Helene, how are you? Hi Lisa, if you walk into a room and you meet somebody, there's a transference that goes on straight away. And so if that person reminds you of someone, you can find yourself very triggered, even though the counsellor might not have even started to talk or even started the work with you. So always bear that in mind as well, that you can have this unconscious triggering going on that can make you think, oh, is that who I thought they were, or I don't like them, or you just get a feeling. So, you know, always bear that in mind. And remember, it's your choice who you work with. That's really important to remember. So I think the internet's a fabulous place to look for a therapist. So at the moment, my books are closed. I may decide to open them at a future time, but at the moment, I'm really busy getting the group going and doing some online things. I do have a small client group that comes to see me, but they've been seeing me for years. So they're continuing to see me, but I haven't opened my books for anybody else. That's not to say that I won't in the future, but at the moment, my books are closed. However, if you wanted to get a sense of how you might work with me, then coming into my group, seeing me speak today, getting me to answer a question is a really good way to do it. Does give you that sense of how I work. And you can also watch the previous Facebook Lives, and they're also another really effective way of seeing how I work. So I would strongly recommend that if you're looking for a counsellor, that you go out into the web and you look for counsellors, look for psychologists, look for psychotherapists, look for counsellors, search for them in Facebook, and heaps will come up. And you can watch them all. I shouldn't be telling you this because you'll all find somebody else. But heaps will come up. And you can go into their groups or interact on their website or read their blogs or whatever and get a sense of who they are and whether you feel like you'd like to work with them or not. And also the beauty of the web is, you know, you've got a bit of a photograph as well. And if you don't like the look of them, well, you move on. So what are the things you should look for when you're choosing a therapist? The most important thing is you want to know qualifications and you want to know their experience. Really, really important. So if you go and see, you know, a life coach, a counsellor, a psychologist, a psychotherapist, a psychiatrist, whoever it is, well, of course you want to know they've had their base qualification. But what you need to remember is that the base qualification gives you a bit of a taste of everything. but it doesn't specialise you. So unless someone's done a master's degree or, like me, gone down the pathway of doing an experiential registration and extra study on top in order to focus on a certain subject, because I'm not allowed to say I specialise because I don't have a master's and I'm not in the college and all that technical stuff. So you want to look at how they've gone down that pathway of choosing their specialty. So they might have, like me, I studied in England at the University of East London, and I studied at Relationships Australia, and I have 2 certificates in couple and relationships therapy from 2 different countries. I've also done internships with both of those certificates, and I worked for Relationships Australia. At one stage, I've seen couples for 10 years, and at one stage I ran their women's family violence group, and I did that for 3 years, and I did all the assessments for the girls to come in, and I actually ran the groups. So that is you know, an example of the sort of experience you're looking for. So if you ask the therapist, what's your experience, and they say to you, oh, I've been doing it for years, that's not the kind of dismissive answer that you want. I want you to be really assertive about this and understand your boundaries, because that's just dismissive saying that. You want to hear exactly where they've worked and what they've done and what their qualifications are, and you have a right to know this. You really do. It's your money and it's your life and it's your story. So be really mindful of that, because you know, I've heard of girls, you know, I think my horror stories are when girls come to me and say they're going to have couples therapy, and I say, well, I can't see you because I already have a relationship with you, and you need to be being mindful that your partner doesn't want to come into the room with me and feel ganged up on and all that kind of thing. So they go off and perhaps find their own couples therapist, and then they tell me that, oh, it's okay, he's been doing it for years and he hasn't had any formal training. And I'm sorry, but unless you've had a very, very good supervisor, it's not enough. You really need to have that formal training in couples therapy. And I'm really on my soapbox about this, because it is really hard to be in the room with a couple and sit in the mess. It is really hard to sit in that central space and not take somebody's side. And it is really, really difficult to do all of the interventions you need to do with a couple and control the room if they're ready to have an all-in brawl. And if you have, listen to that noise, I hope you all can't hear it. And if you have a therapist see you for couples therapy who, I hope you can all still hear me. Can you please message me if you can't hear me? If you have a couples therapist, I'm going to move. Hang on. I'm just going to move, guys, because that's too loud. Just a sec. Here I go. I'm just going to move down here because I think we'll have a little bit more of a barrier to the noise. Yeah, it's not as loud down here. I'm going to sit down here. Oh, boy. I'm getting a bit tired. From the day I started Facebook Live back in November, we had builders at the back of our place, and they're still there, and I'm getting a bit over the noise. I really am. I'm at home in it all day, and it's really getting to me. You know, there's not a lot I can say. I think they're sanding floors, and there's not a lot I can say about that. But when the builders start screaming at each other from the top of the thing, and they've got music going on top of all the noise of the tools, it all gets a bit much. Anyway. So I'm going to get off my high horse and just say to you that it's really important that you ask about the qualifications of the therapist that you are going to see. And don't feel, you know, some therapists can be a little bit, you know, I'm the great big therapist and you're the tiny little client. And that's about them, not you. So you need to feel really confident that you can ask these questions. You have every right to know. All right. Ask your therapist about the style of work that they use. Now, it's interesting. Some therapists are more psychotherapy trained, which is where they work on the inner world. Some are more, you know, person-centered trained. Some are CBT. Some will be quite instructional. I'm quite an instructional therapist, so I'm there educating you the whole time we're talking. Drawing things on the whiteboard and giving you clarity, and I'm quite involved in that. And look, you I've been criticised for that. I've had supervisors say to me, slow down, Elizabeth, it's better if the client can work it out for themselves and that kind of thing. But that's how I like to work. That's how I work. Other therapists will sit with you with a belief that the answers are inside you, and that's fine. It's another way of working, but some clients like that instructional style more so than having to do the hard work themselves, which it's understandable. Some therapists will have this approach where they will wait for you to speak. And you've got to be very careful with that kind of approach because it can become a battle of wills of who speaks first. Things like that. So it's really important that you get clear, especially if you've had therapy before. If you haven't had therapy before, it's a bit hard to kind of know. But if you've had therapy before, think about what you did and didn't like. It's the first question I always ask when clients come to see me to ascertain whether I'm going to be the right therapist for them. Because I'll say, was there anything about your therapy before that you had before that you did like and that you didn't like? So I can get a sense of whether I'm the right person in terms of style. Clients will ask me things like, do you give homework? I don't like homework, and I don't want someone just to sit there and say, I want them to give me some direction. So, and then other clients will say, I found it so helpful just having somebody to listen to me. So it really depends. It's good if you can be clear about what it is that you're looking for, so that you can tell your therapist what you want, because then that'll give you a sense of whether the person is the right person for you. Ask about fees and the length of session. This is really important. What I like to do with my beginning sessions is I always like to have a bit of an assessment. I do charge for that, but if I found that I really couldn't see the client, then I wouldn't charge. I would say, look, I'm sorry, I'm not the right person for you. It's been lovely to meet you, and I would make a referral, and I wouldn't charge for that. But some therapists will. They'll do an assessment, and then they'll tell you, I'm not the right therapist for you and I'm going to give you a referral, but they still charge you for that session. So it just depends how the therapists work. I don't think it's fair to charge if you can't go on with the work. I really don't, but that's my opinion. But you need to work out in your own mind what it is that you expect. So before you see the therapist, make sure you ask how long the session will be for, how much the therapist is going to charge, whether they will charge you if they can't continue to see you because their area of expertise is not appropriate. You need to ask lots of questions like that so that you don't get caught paying for something and finding that you don't get value for service. The other thing you need to ask about is insurance rebates. So ask if you want Medicare rebate, then you need to ask whether the therapist can provide you with that. And if you want Medicare rebate from the very first session, you need to make sure that you have a referral before you go to the counselling session. And ideally, that referral has the therapist's name on it, because there is a real issue if it doesn't have the therapist's name on it. If Medicare ever audited you, the therapist can get into trouble, because how Medicare view it is not that you got the rebate, but that I did, because I've charged my normal rate, and then you've got a refund on that. But the way Medicare look at it is, well, you got benefit out of us giving a bonus to the client. So if you do not follow our rules, you have to give those bonuses back. And I've heard horror stories of girls running agencies where the paperwork hasn't been done properly, and they've owed thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to Medicare when there's been an audit. So I'm a bit of a stickler for it. If you want Medicare rebate from me, the forms must have my name on them. Oh, my glasses are starting to change colour, so maybe they haven't forgotten to do it how to do it after all. All right, so do ask those questions too. Be mindful that psychotherapists and life coaches don't get... Oh, there they go, going black. There you go. Psychotherapists and life coaches don't get Medicare rebate. Only psychologists and social workers get Medicare rebate. So, but their pricing should be reflective of the fact that they can't give you that additional bonus. And I guess their pricing is reflective of their experience and what it is that they have to offer you. So that's important as well. And then you need to make a decision as to whether you feel that therapist is good value based on their therapeutic style, and hopefully if they've got a little bit of an internet presence, you can get a feel for that, their qualifications and their experience. So I hope that that is helpful to you. The most important thing you need to remember when choosing a therapist is don't be intimidated. And remember, it's your money, Ralph, and you have every right to ask as many questions as you like before you go and see your therapist. So really important to remember. So, is there a